Is Black Ops 3 finally starting to die? And honestly, ask yourself the question here of when was the last time that you played the game? I want to have as good faith of a conversation as I possibly can while looking at the numbers, vibes, future, past, and a little bit of everything else about the game. Since Black Ops 3 has been a super important part of the zombies community for a really long time, it arguably kept the whole thing alive over the last couple of years, so I think that this is worth talking about. Obviously, as this video is being made, Black Ops 6 released about 2 months ago, and for that game, I would say overall the community has been pretty happy with it so far. The game isn't perfect, but no game is, and 95% of the feedback that I've seen has been positive. Now, the reason that this is important is because things like this do affect Black Ops 3 going forward, not just for this year, but potentially forever. If you're someone who's unfamiliar with how much of an oddity Black Ops 3 actually is, let me explain. Call of Duty is a yearly game, and as a result of that, when a new game releases every October or November, the player base of the last game drops to only a tiny fraction of what it was the week prior. As an example, going from 130,000 concurrent players down to just 7,000 in a month. Some games have it worse than others, where something like Advanced Warfare that released in 2014 has 30 players on PC most days. But then on the complete other end of the spectrum, we have Black Ops 3, where only a couple of months ago it was peaking at over 10,000 concurrent players, and they only released 1 year apart from each other. That's also far and away the most players for any Call of Duty that isn't bundled into COD HQ. That includes games like MW3, Warzone, and Vanguard, so we can't really see player counts for those individual games, so we don't know if they're higher or lower. Regardless though, Black Ops 3 is 9 years old, and it's held firm on its grip as the second most popular Call of Duty game in the entire catalog. You guys aren't dumb, most people aren't buying the game to play the campaign, even if the train does go boom. Multiplayer has also been basically unplayable for 7 or 8 years now due to the insane amount of hackers and dorks who have trigger bot controllers to make the Brecci shotgun into a full auto gun. The reason literally everyone plays Black Ops 3 is because of zombies. Starting with the launch map of Shadows of Evil, and for an extra $5 you could get the Giant as well, which is a remake of Darius. Most hardcore community members will label this as a pretty dang good deal. Shadows of Evil alone is considered the greatest map ever made among a pretty wide stretch of the community. You've also got a celebrity cast, great atmosphere, great music, and probably the most popular Easter egg speedrun in zombies history. Sure, it is a little bit complicated to figure out the map's basic features without YouTube tutorials, but if you do understand the map, then it's a very good time. If you don't want to understand any of that, then you can play the Giant for the extra $5 like I said. Nowadays, this map is actually bundled in when you buy Black Ops 3 a lot of the time, which is a really nice bonus, honestly. Anyway, the Giant is obviously a remaster of Darius from World of War, and sure, there's not a ton added to it from the original map, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of people really like that. It's a small map with very little thing required, and it's a great way to pass the time. I would say 95% of zombies players out there, if you told them that they could go sit on the catwalk in a newer game than World of War that isn't so janky, they would jump all over that in an instant. So if you were to buy Black Ops 3 right now for the first time, that's 2 great maps with 2 completely different vibes and playstyles. That's before I even mention that Black Ops 3 is also commonly paired with Zombies Chronicles for free, or at least at a huge discount. There's not much of a better value than 10 zombies maps, even if you are paying the full $60 for it. We haven't even touched on the DLC season, which has Der Eisendrache, also a contender for the community's favorite map of all time. There's Zetsubo no Shima, which has Grass to Touch, Gorod Krovi, and Revelations. Plus the aforementioned Zombies Chronicles. All in, if you have every map, then there are 14 of them to play with, which is a crazy amount and is the most of any Call of Duty Zombies game. With just that alone, Black Ops 3 would have always had a solid amount of players, but then you add on the Steam Workshop with mod tools and it takes things to a whole other level. Having the ability for the Zombies community to create custom maps and mods is undeniably the most popular part of Black Ops 3. It did take a few years for things to really get rolling though. I remember back when they first came out, the maps were usually small, buggy, and took a really long time to create something that nowadays people would be able to create in an afternoon. Obviously, there were exceptions to this, especially if the map makers had previous experience working on World of War custom zombies maps, but once the community gained more knowledge and were able to build on top of previous work, things got cooking. In February of 2020, before things got spicy all over the world, Black Ops 3 on PC was averaging 1,885 players that month. Not bad, but not really great. By May of 2020 though, only 3 months later, that number had spiked up to 4,800 on average. And while that spike was not permanent, with player counts dropping back to below 2,000 after about a year, something really funny actually made Black Ops 3 even more popular than during the pandemic. In November of 2021, we had Milo make the best face of all time. Look at how happy he is playing Dare on Fun in Vanguard Zombies. Okay, jokes aside, the extreme amount of backlash to Vanguard being a very poo-poo bad game was the hardcore zombies community coming together to collectively just decide, no, we are not going to play this game, we're not even going to give this game a chance. I've said this before, but I streamed Vanguard on release day and literally not a single person that came into the chat was excited about it. I think every probably 10 to 15 minutes I would ask people, hey, are you guys excited for this? How are you finding the game? And most of them would say either they didn't buy it or they tried one game and then just gave up and they went back to something else. Me and my wife even spent the time to reach round 189 flawless on that game, which was like 2 rounds below the record, and still no one cared. Because of the zombies community rejecting Vanguard, by January of 2022, player counts for Black Ops 3 went back to 5,000 on average, and then 6,400 in April, and then all the way up over 7,000 in July. By this point, we're pretty much in the depths of the dark ages of zombies. Vanguard sucks with no one playing that, and the upcoming game is another Modern Warfare, which looks like it's not even going to include zombies at all. Black Ops 3 was basically the zombies community's way of huddling next to a fire during a blizzard so that it doesn't freeze to death. At this point, maps on Black Ops 3 were coming out more and more often, the scale and the quality of them were all increasing all the time, and pretty much every week there was something new to play. That momentum carried all the way through 2023, with it seeing a little bit of a dip for the months surrounding MW3 Zombies launch before just shooting right back up to 5,000 and 6,000 players for most of 2024. Even as late as September of this year, only a few months ago, it was sitting at a little under 6,000 average players, so when Black Ops 6 came out, things obviously could have gone one of two ways. Some people thought Black Ops 6 was going to be an absolute disaster, with the community rejecting it like what happened with Vanguard, or it could do pretty well and likely take that next step forward for zombies and bring us out of the dark ages a little bit. And well, so far it seems like it was that step forward. As of November 30th, Black Ops 3 had its lowest average player count for a month in over 2 years, coming in at just above 3,000 average players, and so far December looks like it's going to average out worse than that. So now's where we can ask the question of, is this a start of the death of Black Ops 3, or is this just another bump in the road that it always recovers from? By the way, when I say death, I'm not talking about it being advanced warfare levels of dead and having 30 players on it. For Black Ops 3, I think it's more fair to call it dead once there's like, let's say 1,500 players on average for more than a couple of months in a row, which would put it at pre-pandemic numbers. Let's start with the argument of Black Ops 3 is dying. Black Ops 6 has been undoubtedly a huge success on most metrics. The community still seems to be having fun with it, and YouTube views on channels like Mr. Waffles and Lego Unlocked are literally the highest that they have ever been. With it being a much more modern game and an entire DLC season still ahead of it, Black Ops 6 is pulling a ton of people towards it right now. The levels of excitement that I'm seeing for Citadel Day more, even after all this, AI bullshit that's been going on and the sword's not really being great, it's still kind of nuts regardless, with it drawing comparisons to Der Eisendrache. As a result, Black Ops 3 has been seeing a big drop in players. One thing I also haven't touched on yet, but is super important, is the social aspect of custom zombies. A lot of people tend to play new custom maps when their friends do it on Discord, or the way that they'll find new maps to play is by scrolling through YouTube and they'll find a crazy new map in their recommended. People like FPS Psycho, Renzaru, Kinjora, even NoahJ456 have been pretty important on getting the word out about these new maps. Whenever something launches, they're right there to post fun new videos and get everyone excited to go download it and play it themselves. Because of the huge YouTube exposure, more of the community will go to their PC and download and play these maps, which then makes the custom map makers even more excited and motivated to create more custom maps. It's a positive feedback loop, with these custom maps even pulling in a lot of newer people who are randomly getting recommended them on YouTube, so they'll go buy Black Ops 3, slowly growing that player base month after month. When Black Ops 6 came out though, all of that kinda hit a wall because most people I know besides FPS Psycho and Renzaru are still only uploading Black Ops 6 content. Psycho just does a mix of both games, but either way, this lack of YouTube presence and a new game to play continues to drop the Black Ops 3 player base, and then we need to look forward from now. What happens if Black Ops 6 continues to hold most of the community's attention for the next 10 months? If that happens, then Black Ops 3 doesn't really have a chance to recover that player base that might have been lapsed but does have the chance to come back. Then next year, if the rumor is true that we are getting a Black Ops 2 sequel, and according to some leaked playtest we're getting some sort of transit sequel and the premise crew coming back, that could be huge. Assuming that this Black Ops 2 sequel goes well too, then we might actually be eating really good as a community all the way until the end of 2026, which is a very long time away, over that time, even if Black Ops 3 only goes down by 30 or 40 players every month, then it starts to stack up. By that point, what's the community around Black Ops 3 even going to look like? Are the custom map makers going to stay loyal to a shrinking group of players that are probably going to get a little bit more toxic over time because they're not getting as many maps as they used to, and they're going to start getting even more bored? It's going to be hard for map makers to dedicate themselves to huge projects that aren't getting 50,000 or 80,000 downloads like they did a couple of years ago. I even went and spent a few hours on a Saturday, which is the most popular day to play games, and at peak times on PS4, it was kind of hard for me to find lobbies. It took multiple minutes to find a full lobby for Shadows of Evil, and even that had a player in it who had hack stats and gobblegums. He used at least 15 round robins in our round 30 game, which is really funny and probably means that he has unlimited amounts of them. That's not really going to make for a really fun experience in a public match if he's basically going to take control of the whole thing. I also looked for a Drazendrock match, which I did find after a minute or two, and it was actually filled with people who knew what to do, so no complaints there. Kino der Toten was a different story. There was only one lobby, and with the two players that I matched with, both of them clearly had hacked profiles, so I had no interest in playing with them. As nice as it was to find some lobbies, this was at absolute peak times on the best day, and there still wasn't more than 1 or 2 lobbies to pick from on the EU servers. Does this mean that on weekdays, or if you played at weird times of the night, then there just isn't going to be any lobbies at all on console? You guys are going to need to tell me in the comments. This video is actually inspired by a comment that I got on my video talking about why Black Ops 3 had so many players that I made like a year and a half ago. He said that he couldn't find any lobbies, and honestly it might be true. The game is kinda dead on consoles right now. But now we can look at the optimistic future, because Black Ops 3 does have a surprising amount of things working in its favor to begin thriving again. The first of those is history. Black Ops 3, if nothing else, has proven itself to be extremely resilient no matter what year it is. Player counts right now look pretty much identical to what they looked like the month that MW2 launched in 2022. That's also still higher than it was in all of 2018 and 2019. Pretty much every single time that a new game comes out, Black Ops 3 takes a hit for a couple months and sees lower player counts, but then it always recovers every single time. The last game to really hold Black Ops 3 down for more than a couple of months was Cold War, but then like I mentioned earlier, when Vanguard came out, players went right back up to the highest that they had been in years. The Zombies community's fallback game is basically always Black Ops 3. Whenever the new game is bad or there's no zombies included that year, even if there's a long wait between DLC maps, people always seem to go back and play Black Ops 3 because it's just there and it's easy to access for a lot of us. Oddly enough, the worse that the rest of Zombies is performing, the more it actually benefits Black Ops 3. So as long as we have bad content or a lack of it, Black Ops 3 is always going to have players. Another huge part of this as well is it's obviously high quality content, especially with a lot of it being solo friendly. There's not a whole lot of extreme negatives about Black Ops 3 for anyone who's a hardcore gamer and willing to learn a little bit. Even for those players who don't want to have to learn all that shit, most of Zombies Chronicles along with the Giant and Revelations are right there, and I think at this point anyone who's played custom zombies knows there's about 60 billion small box map, tower maps, or cube maps to go through which don't require learning. With there being like 6 years worth of custom maps on the workshop at this point, it's pretty much impossible to run out of maps to play unless you're someone who put 15,000 hours into the game and you are constantly going through the workshop. For anyone new, they'll have good maps to play for the next decade. Plus, Black Ops 6 clearly hasn't stopped some of the work in progress maps from being finished on Black Ops 3, with Mob of the Dead Remastered coming out a couple of weeks ago. It's a high quality map from someone who's a well-known and respected map maker, and even though it was only temporary, it did help spike the max player count for it on release day up to 4,700. You could actually even argue that zombies being popular overall helps Black Ops 3, you know, the whole rising tides raises all ships argument. With the general Call of Duty player being recommended more zombies content on YouTube, it's possible that they will eventually get recommended some Black Ops 3 videos, or if some of the biggest creators come back to it eventually, their new and younger Black Ops 6 viewers might see BO3 and go try it for the first time. There's a whole generation of COD fans to indoctrinate who have never experienced Black Ops 3 because they grew up playing Warzone because they were just so young. So where does all this lead us? Well, honestly, I think that the next few months of Citadel Daymore and the second DLC map for Black Ops 6 will give us a much better idea on things. But generally, I don't think Black Ops 3 is at risk of dying anytime soon. A lot of people have way too much nostalgia for it who are still active gamers to this day. Maybe in like 5 or 6 years it might die, but for now it's still a great time to be a Black Ops 3 fan, a Black Ops 6 fan, and overall a Zombies fan. Like I said, I do still have my concerns, especially with a lot of the custom map makers getting older nowadays. There is a chance that in the next couple years they might get really bored with the game and then move on from it, and then we might not have a new crop of map makers after that, but honestly that is an argument for a different day. Even if that does happen, like I said, we still have so much content in the back catalog that it's insane.